All right, let's talk about late 2025, because that's when the world of AI coding just exploded. It was a full-on war, a showdown that completely changed the game for how AI writes software. And today, we're going to break down exactly what went down. So you got to understand, this wasn't about those simple code suggestions we were used to anymore. No way. We had stepped into a brand new era, something called agentic coding. And what that means is the AI isn't just your helper anymore. It's acting like a full-blown autonomous software engineer. We're talking about an AI that can handle massive, complex projects all by itself.
And the craziest part? The entire landscape just shifted, practically overnight. Think about this. In the span of just 2 weeks, you had 4 of the biggest names in the game, xAI, Google, OpenAI, Anthropic, all dropping their new agentic models. It was an absolute frenzy, just one after the other.
Okay, so first up in the ring, let's talk about Google's Gemini 3 Pro. This thing was positioned as the undisputed champ, right? The smartest, most powerful model out there. On paper, it was the heavyweight champion, no question. I mean, the official hype was just off the charts. They were talking doctor-level reasoning, it was #1 on all the benchmarks, but then developers actually started using it, and they found a completely different and, frankly, a terrifying reality. Yeah, it was brilliant, for sure, but it was also dangerously unpredictable. So much so that it earned this chilling nickname, the data killer. And this quote from a developer, someone in the trenches, it just captures the feeling perfectly. It's like Gemini 3 Pro had all the raw talents of a rock star senior dev, but it was so confident, even when it was dead wrong, that it became this huge liability. All right, next up, we've got xAI's Grok 4.1. Now, Grok played a totally different game. They weren't focused on just raw intelligence. Instead, their whole thing was creating a more human-like, personality-driven experience. So Grok got all this praise for its high EQ, its emotional intelligence. It was amazing at understanding what you, the developer, actually wanted to build. And everyone agreed it was incredible for brainstorming. But when it came time to actually write the code, whoa, it was what they called a logic black hole. So yeah, the verdict was pretty much crystal clear. Grok was the best product manager you could ask for. It could totally get your vision, help you plan everything out, but it was the absolute last AI you'd want to actually, build the thing. Okay, moving on. Then OpenAI steps into the fray with GPT 5.1. And their big play was tackling one of the single biggest problems in AI, long-term memory. Their secret sauce was this new technique called compaction, and it promised something incredible, basically infinite memory for these marathon coding sessions that could run for hours or even days. The problem was, this created this new, really subtle issue that developers started calling logic drift. Essentially, the longer it ran, the more it would kind of forget crucial details and constraints you gave it at the beginning. And this quote really says it all, right? It was this tireless worker you could leave running all night, but you might come back in the morning and find it had just confidently gone completely off the rails, building something that had nothing to do with the original plan. So it wasn't really a lack of memory, it was more like a corruption of memory. And that brings us to our final contender, Anthropic's Claude Opus 4.5. Now, Claude showed up with a very, very specific promise. They were there to fix the laziness problem that everyone knew about from their older models, where it would just give up or give you an incomplete answer on tough tasks. And guess what? That's exactly what developers found. It wasn't just less lazy. It was thorough. It showed this deep, fundamental understanding of good software design. It delivered what the community started calling architectural sanity. The code wasn't just working. It was well-reasoned. It was trustworthy. And this really gets to the heart of what would decide the whole showdown. See, for serious, professional software engineering, raw power and speed meant absolutely nothing compared to trust. Developers were willing to pay more for Claude's slow, deliberate, methodical approach, because you could count on it. So okay, we've got our 4 contenders laid out. You'd think, looking at the official scores, that the winner would be a no-brainer. But this is where the whole story takes a really fascinating twist. I mean, if you just looked at the standard benchmarks, things like the Ella Marina leaderboard, Gemini 3 Pro was the undisputed king. It was sitting right there at the top. The numbers said it was the most intelligent model, and not by a little bit, by a clear margin. So if the numbers were so clear, Why was the story on the ground, on the actual battlefield of day-to-day coding, so completely different? How could it be that developers were praising these other models while being genuinely terrified of the supposed champion?
Well, this one number pretty much explains everything. 800 gigabytes. That is how much system data a single user lost. Why? Because Gemini, in a moment of what I can only call a confident hallucination, decided to run a cleanup script. It didn't just delete the project files. It deleted system files, the IDE itself, the whole shebang. A mistake from this thing wasn't just a bug. It was a full-blown catastrophe. And this is what brings us to our surprise champion, Claude Opus 4.5. And it really reveals the completely different strategy that let it win the war. See, it was never about being the fastest or the flashiest. It was about something else entirely. This table right here, it's basically the developer vibe check. It's the real verdict from the community. And when you look at it, the whole story just flips on its head. Gemini? Dangerous. Grok? A fun brainstorming partner. GPT 5.1? A flawed but tireless worker. But Claude? Claude was the one you could actually trust.
And look, Claude's victory was no accident. It was a brilliant three-part strategic masterstroke. First, they put reliability, that whole architectural sanity thing, above all else. Raw power be damned. Second, they made a massive price cut, which suddenly made its deep thinking affordable. And third, they made sure it plugged seamlessly into the pro tools that developers actually use every single day.
So here's the real takeaway, the crucial point. The AI coding wars of late 2025, they marked this fundamental shift in what we even value in an AI. We moved away from what you could call vibe coding, all about speed, creativity, flashy demos, and we entered a new era of verification, an era where the only things that truly matter are reliability, trust, and bug-free code.
And that leaves us with one final, kind of provocative thought to chew on. In this new age of autonomous AI that can build, but also completely destroy entire systems, maybe the real measure of intelligence isn't the AI that confidently shouts that it knows all the answers. Maybe, just maybe, the smartest AI is the one that's humble enough to know its own limits.